Hey guys, it's me, and today I'm here with a different kind of chit chat get ready with me. This is going to be a topic driven chit chat get ready with me, and it's also going to be done in a voiceover type format because I do worry that with me just simply doing my makeup, I'll wind up getting off track a bit and ramble on and whatnot. So I'm gonna do a voiceover for the topic and everything that I'm wanting to talk about, and then too, my sister and her son are here, so they're presently asleep. No, they're not. They're upstairs now. I don't want to risk trying to have a deep conversation and them happening in the background and whatnot. So yeah, so we're just gonna do a voiceover for the conversation that we're gonna be having in this video. And to give you guys just a quick little insight as to what we're gonna be talking about today, we're gonna be talking about something that has been on my mind a lot lately, and that is the toxic sides of the Gothic subculture. Now, coming from someone who used to identify within the subculture, who no longer does and everything, I've talked about kind of sort of this topic in the past and everything on my channel and whatnot, with making a video talking about why I no longer identify as goth, and then doing a follow-up to that video and everything. I've talked about this ever so slightly, but lately I've just been really thinking about the toxic sides of the subculture, and I do want to talk about them. I don't know why I do, I just have this need to talk about it, so that's why we're going to be doing it. I do want to go ahead and mention this because I know that things might come off a little bit harsh and negative in this video. I do still have a massive love and appreciation for the subculture. It's just that with my time of no longer identifying within it and still keeping up with Goth Creators and whatnot, I've started noticing some things within the subculture. I don't want to say that I didn't necessarily notice before, but I'm seeing a lot more people starting to develop a similar mindset that I do when it comes to being alternative and whatnot. I'm hoping I'm making sense with talking about this right now, so it'll make more sense once I do the voice. So we're gonna be talking about this throughout this video. I'm hoping that some people don't get too offended and whatnot, because I know I have a habit of doing that. If you are familiar with my music channel, I have a habit of angering Nightwish fans, so much to the point where I have now deleted, I think all but maybe one of my Nightwish reaction videos. You say one little thing that might be a negative thing, the Nightwish fans automatically deem you as a worthless human being and want you removed from the face of the earth. I've said this once and I'll say it again, Nightwish fans are the K-pop fans in the metal scene. But yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and dive on into this. I'm going to shut up and start putting some makeup on. But before we do that, if you guys are new here to my channel, don't forget to hit subscribe, and also while you're down there, definitely give this video a thumbs up because that'll help me out a lot. All my links are down in the description box below, and yeah, let's get started. Okay, so let's begin this chit chat getting ready with me. So I forgot to write some notes, so I'm just going to be completely winging it with this. So if I repeat myself and just ramble on and just go on about random stuff and everything, I apologize. So yeah, but let's go ahead and dive on into this. So I'm not entirely sure what sparked me to want to do this. It's just been something that has been just heavily on my mind lately, and I just have felt the need to talk about the toxic sides of the Gothic subculture. Now, obviously, toxicity within the subculture is limited to a small place and everything. It doesn't make up the whole thing and whatnot. But obviously, when it comes to things like this, people tend to focus on the negative. It's kind of like with the beauty community here on YouTube. A lot of people say that the beauty community is very toxic and very negative, when in reality, these people who say this are only aware of the big names within the community. And it's surely those bigger names within the community that are instilling the toxicity. The things that I have noticed that are toxic is probably a big thing, and that is when it comes to fashion and the aesthetic in general. It's the fact that the subculture is refusing to evolve is a very toxic trait within it. And is a big reason why I left the subculture. The fact that people desperately cling on to the aesthetic that was developed in the 80s for the Gothic subculture, it's so very limiting because not everybody will like the same things. Not everybody's going to want to go for that aesthetic. And the fact that you'll have people like myself, when I identify within the subculture, who don't follow that particular aesthetic, you automatically get scrutinized and criticized, and sometimes in some extreme degrees when you encounter the elitists, you wind up getting bashed for it, which is just absolutely ridiculous because, I mean, everyone has their own preferences and things wind up escalating even more beyond the aesthetic once you start talking about the music. Now, for me, when I identified within the subculture, I never really cared for the music that much. I mostly was drawn to the aesthetic, but I did have an appreciation for some of the music. Now that I no longer identify within the subculture, I do find myself occasionally listening to goth bands, whether it be like some of the original trad goth bands or even like modern takes on the trad goth bands that existed, like say like bands like Rose Garden Funeral Party and like modern darkwave bands like Lahania and Azrai. But people will sometimes even say that those bands aren't even goth bands because of the fact that they didn't come out of the scene during the 80s. And so those particular goth purists and elitists are even more ridiculous and further instill like this really toxic environment within the subculture that just winds up driving people away from it. But to go back to the aesthetic, a thing that I heard a lot from Goth Creators and just reading things in forums and whatnot over the years when I was younger and unemployed and broke and trying to figure out what to do for like fashion and whatnot, a lot of people would say to go to thrift stores and shop in thrift stores and you can find things there. But the thing that they never address though is the fact that depending on where you live, you might not find anything ever inside your local thrift store, whether it be in like a Goodwill, a Value Village, or just a random like mom and pop type of local thrift shop. And depending on where you live, you might not be able to find anything like that at all. Like me, I have gone thrifting many times before and I have found some interesting finds, but they're just very basic items. The only interesting thing that I have found isn't really even a goth related item. Like, whereas the other items that I have found in thrift stores I wound up liking are very basic items and generally things that you can find in just like a regular clothing store. Is just something that's black. And I just feel as if that with them always saying like to go to thrift stores and to only rely on thrift stores, it just makes it seem as if people shouldn't be wearing like pre-made goth clothing, which I mean to an extent I can understand because a lot of it is marked up very dramatically. Other times it just makes it feel as if like if you wear pre-made goth clothing then it's not goth at all, like because a lot of the pre-made goth clothes is not an aesthetic from the 80s, which again takes me back to like what I was mentioning before. If you don't have a particular look, then it's automatically labeled as a look that isn't goth. The fact that there's just so much gatekeeping and things are just so nitpicky just really bothered me and really turned me off from the subculture and wanting to make goth related content anymore. And so that's why I really stopped doing goth related content back when I identified within subculture, was because of the fact that I kept on getting like comments like that, even if I was aware that a look that I was going for didn't really like necessarily deserve like a goth label. The moment that someone would see me and realize that I'm alternative and I identified as goth, and then they see like this particular outfit, they're like, that's not goth, and ridicule me for it. And they find out like the kind of music that I like, and with me, I am a metalhead through and through. I mean, I listen to other genres of music as well, but metal music is my bread and butter. And the moment that they notice that, they immediately are just like, you're not goth because you don't listen to like goth bands, you only listen to metal music. Just because you listen to metal music doesn't make you goth, which to an extent I do agree with that statement. But at the same time, people who are goth can enjoy metal music as well. And so again, it just goes back to them gatekeeping and being very nitpicky and only wanting the subculture to be a certain way. And then also, like, you had to be aware of the fact that there's also like a level of racism within the community, because there are a lot of people who gatekeep the gothic subculture with saying that people of deeper skin tones can't be part of the subculture, even though they very much can. Anybody can be goth. It doesn't matter what your skin tone is. But there are some people that are very strict about saying that only white people can be goth, or white passing people can be goth. And it's a load of shit. It's an absolute load of shit. And the fact that that exists is just gross. But what really shined a light to me that things can get really toxic within the subculture is a couple of years ago, I think this was in 2019, I want to say, there was a lot of drama centered around the YouTube goth community, in the sense that a particular creator, I cannot even remember his name, all I remember is of Herbs and Altars referring to him as the Angry Man. He made a video in response to like a smaller goth creator like him, and just completely went off on the larger goth creators on the platform, talking about them not disclosing sponsorships, when in reality he doesn't know what a sponsored video truly is, because the person that he was making a video response to, they had made a video talking about how these larger goth creators, they're doing these videos where they are getting sent free clothes from a brand to talk about them in a video, and they're getting like sometimes like up to about maybe close to $200 worth of clothing to haul off in these videos. And she mentioned that like the regular consumer probably won't be able to fork out that much money on a full outfit from these brands. And she was just pointing that out. But this guy took that video and then went on to talk about how like, oh, these creators are being sponsored, they're given free product, and they're being sponsored, they're not disclosing that they're being sponsored. And then he also went off on a massive rant on Black Friday for absolutely no reason. And it was just really gross and really weird. And it just really left a weird taste in my mouth. And I think I even blocked the guy before I could even like get a chance to even subscribe to him. I did wind up watching his video and it just made me so uncomfortable. I do think I might have blocked him, but who knows, this was so long ago, so there ain't no telling. And it just further proved to me that the subculture is just a very toxic place. And there are other alternative people out there that used to identify within the subculture who very much agree with that statement, that the subculture is just a very toxic place these days, and it's just very strict for no reason, and it's just very bizarre. And once they stopped identifying within the subculture, like myself, they saw a massive improvement of their mental health and just how they live their everyday lives. They still very much are alternative people, but they don't identify as goth, and they don't have a goth aesthetic anymore for some people, like for an example, Sebastian Columbine. But their look and aesthetic is still very much a alternative aesthetic. They go for a very pastel, very solid white type of aesthetic now, which is still very much an alternative aesthetic, but it's not a goth aesthetic like they used to have. And I'm pretty sure that they probably wound up getting a lot of backlash for shifting their look so dramatically like they did. And the fact that that is the case for some people, where they used to identify within the subculture and then realize that, hey, this really isn't for me anymore, they can then get backlash for stepping away from the subculture, which was something that I was very much aware of when I stopped identifying within it and stepped away from it as well. I was very aware that I could probably face some backlash from some of my goth friends and whatnot. Luckily, everyone was very understanding, but I did notice like some friendships wound up ending after I stopped identifying within the subculture, but they weren't really deep friendships to begin with, so losing those friendships didn't really bother me at all. I don't keep up with a lot of goth creators anymore either, because I'm just gonna be honest, like a lot of the content is just very boring to me, when it's just like people just making like strictly goth related content. Like if they're doing like other things besides talking about the subculture, that's fine. But if all they're doing is talking about the subculture, it just starts to bug me because it just gets very, very stale. That's why I stopped following a lot of beauty gurus, because they were all doing the same types of looks all the time, using the same stuff all the time, and it just got boring and repetitive. And I noticed that with no longer watching a lot of those creators, and also just no longer identifying within the subculture and keeping up with a lot of things within it, my life has improved a lot, because I don't have these thoughts and worries in the back of my head. And so leaving the subculture was a very positive thing for me, because I cut a very toxic thing out of my life. Now, I know the subculture isn't toxic for everybody, but it very much was a toxic thing for me. And I know it's a very toxic thing for other people as well, because they feel pigeonholed into a very specific place, and they feel as if they can't explore outside of that place. In which I do want to like quickly say that if you do identify within the subculture, just live your life the way that you want to. If you want to dress a certain way that may not necessarily fit in within the subculture, then do so. If you want to listen to music that doesn't necessarily fit in within the subculture, do so. If you don't like trad goth music, then you don't like it, but you still have an appreciation for it, you still know where the subculture came from, and it's from those trad goth bands, then that should be good enough. But you have these toxic people within the subculture who would say otherwise. But that's about it for this video. I think I was pretty good about not rambling too much, and hopefully this all made sense, because I know sometimes I don't make sense. Hopefully I didn't offend anybody too much and everything. I don't think I got too offensive with this, but you never know. People on the internet will find anything to be angry about. But that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and until I see you guys in my next one, whenever the hell that may be. Goodbye.